we're looking at Job. Job's a fascinating book. We're about to watch a video that's going to explain some of this stuff that I'm going to say here, but it's part of Jewish wisdom literature. Jewish wisdom literature is Proverbs, and Proverbs is, if you do A, you will get B. Like that's,
cause and effect.
Yeah, cause and effect. That's how Proverbs works. And Proverbs, I tend to think, is an incredibly boring book, but that's there's a lot of good stuff in there.
It was on the devotions this morning.
Yeah. So I have a little joke. Like, so we, you guys know how I like to read the Bible. I like to read big chunks and all of that. And so when I was in seminary at the church I was working at, it was a big church and there were multiple seminarians there. And so we had the seminarian Bible study. So we'd each take a week, and about once a month we would teach. And the class decided they wanted to do Proverbs. And they quickly regretted that decision. because I would, because what happens if you teach Proverbs a certain way, it becomes about the wisdom of the teacher that's teaching it. It's like, oh, this is so important, like all that stuff. But Proverbs actually moves thematically. It talks about themes. So that's the best way to teach Proverbs.
Like prose, right?
Yeah, like it'll talk about the same stuff for, a few chapters. And I remember I taught it, and we went through like 5 chapters or something like that. Like went through an entire thing. The next time I taught it, they were halfway through the next chapter. They like three other teachers. It's like half a chapter. And these poor people were so bored with it. And over there, I'm like, I'm sorry, guys. Like that's.
We remember that pastor that used to come here, that older man.
Oh yeah, Russ.
That's how he'd get through 3 or 4 verses if you were lucky.
Yeah. And it's so boring when you go
forever.
Yeah. Because it's like, no, this is obvious.
I was just talking about that.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I had my high school teacher teaching about history. I had history in high school. We never got out of the Civil War. He loved the Civil War. Battle had this and that.
So you have Proverbs, which is very much A, you do A, you get B. Ecclesiastes is the next wisdom literature. It's very much not that. He's like the critic, you could say, the critic, and it's like, well, have you noticed this?
Almost cynical.
It's very cynical. It's very cynical towards all of that. It's like, have you noticed this? And I really like Ecclesiastes. And the big quote in Ecclesiastes is vapor, everything is, well, it's how does he say it? What's the normal way? Vanity, everything's meaningless, everything's meaningless. That's the that's what it is. So that's meaningless is the English translations trying to make sense of what that word actually means. And what it actually means is like vapor or smoke or something like that. Something that you, like fog, you can definitely know that fog's there. You definitely know smoke is there. But as soon as you try to grab it, there's nothing there. Like that's as soon as you try to grab it. And he says that life is like that, and I'll say that I've said that to more people after talking to them after a loved one has died, people that are really struggling, with like, why did this happen? And I'm like, well, this says like, vapor, everything's like vapor. And it's like, you're trying to grasp out for life and nothing's there. And that has brought more comfort to people, because I think the Bible, a lot of times we've taught like this thing has all the answers. If you just read it right, you'll feel better and understand the world.
Yes.
Yeah. Like that's,
and right and get rich.
Yeah, exactly. Live right and get rich. And there's a sense that we even kind of, life will fall apart all around us, and we'll go, oh man, what did I do wrong? And so I think what ends up happening is those people facing with that certain type of grief, that they just don't understand in that moment. It's like a recognition that it's okay to not understand, And yeah,
One thing that came to mind as you were talking about smoking mirrors, was Shakespeare.
Yeah.
As You Like It.
As You Like
All
It.
the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players.
Yeah.
Life's but a walking shadow.
That's very Platonic there. That's very Plato-like. That life is a walking shadow. And so then Job is kind of a response to both those things. Between the critic, of Ecclesiastes, and to the hopeless romantic of Proverbs, that's that it's kind of a response to that. And we
have to pull the little thing on top.
Behind you.
You're turning around.
There's a thing.
No, I broke it.
Oh my.
I broke it.
Better him than you, right?
Oh my goodness, it keeps breaking. There we go. See how I did that? There you go.
All righty.
So Job is a response to all of that. It's like Job, it says, and we'll read this here in a little bit, that he's a righteous and upright dude. And yet everything falls apart around him. And the question is God just? That's the question that's being presented in Job. Is God a God of justice? Or is God not a God of justice? Did he create the world as a system of justice? Did he not? Like what is going on? And Job, right up off the top, he's like, no, like, I don't want to curse God, but he kind of starts cursing God in chapter 4. Like when you start saying curse is the day that I was born in chapter 4, you're kind of cursing God a little bit there, right?
Yeah.
And his friends are like, you must have done something,
Right.
They
were really on.
Really bad.
yeah. And so
That is a blame thing, I call it.
Yeah.
You must have done.
Yeah. And so this book really encourages us, I think, to ask hard questions. And I think it provides a good thoroughfare for us to ask those questions and not really receive a lot of answers. And I don't think Job provides a lot of answers. I think Job allows us a feeling. One of the things, we're going through the Gospel of Mark right now, and one thing I think the Gospel of Mark does is it doesn't necessarily go, Jesus did this, therefore believe. It's not doing that. It's kind of pulling you into the story and giving you something to believe. It's not so much like information about what happened. It's like, hey, don't you feel it yet? You feel it? And so I think Job is kind of doing that to us too, that it's pulling us in and inviting us into the questions. And I think those questions should humble us. And I think that's what we end up seeing at the end is a humble Job. And we'll get into that today. I have kind of a weird view of Job. That I think at the beginning, I don't think he's as righteous as the story is letting on him to be. And so he ends up finding more righteousness at the end. But we'll get into that. I could be wrong about it. No, that's
an example of fighting your inner demons, isn't it?
Yeah, like fighting your inner demons. I think it's all that. But yeah, but I think I think that's definitely part of it. But I think the number one thing that we need to do in Job is allow the questions to wash over us of like, why, what does God's justice in the world look like? Like what is this? And I think it's making us okay with those questions, because there's oftentimes we don't have good answers to things, like that question of why do bad things happen to good people, Why does good things happen to good? Yeah. Why does good things happen to bad people? So that this is doing that question. So we're going to watch a video about the book of Job. So I'm going to hit share screen, sharing all of this. And all right, let's see here. So, hold on, everybody. Hold on. Oh man, hold on. I got to stop that. All right. I couldn't get to where I needed to be. I need to do it first. Okay. Now we'll share the screen. All right. And here's the video.
There are 3 books in the Bible known as the wisdom literature: Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Job. The first, Proverbs, showed us that God is wise and just.
Yeah, we learned that God has ordered the world so that it's fair. The righteous are rewarded, the wicked are punished. In other words, you get what you deserve.
But then we meet Ecclesiastes, who observes, people don't always get what they deserve.
Yeah, he said the world isn't always fair, that life is unpredictable and hard to comprehend, just like smoke.
And this makes you wonder, okay, well, is God wise and just?
Exactly. And so it's that question that is being explored in the final book of wisdom, Job.
All right, let's dive in.
So Job begins with a strange story that takes place up in the heavens, which are described something like a heavenly command center. So God is there with these angelic creatures called the sons of God, and they're all there reporting for duty.
And God points out this guy Job, his servant, showing how righteous and good he is.
And then one of these angelic creatures approaches. He's referred to in Hebrew as the Satan.
The Satan. Who is this?
Well, this word is actually a title, which literally means the one who is opposed. So out of this whole crew, he is the one questioning how God is running the world. And he proposes that Job might not actually love God, that he's only a good person because God rewards him. If God were to take away all of the good things he gave to Job, then we would see his true colors.
So he thinks Job is just working the system?
That's exactly right. Maybe he's obeying just to get what he wants.
So God agrees to this experiment and allows the Satan to inflict suffering on Job.
And Job loses everyone and everything that he cares about. It is devastating. And remember, he deserves none of this. God himself said so.
The remarkable thing is that in the midst of all this suffering, Job still praises God.
At least for chapters 1 and 2. But then in chapter 3, we find out how he's really feeling inside. He unleashes this poem that reveals his devastation. It's a long, elaborate curse on the day that he was born.
After this, some of Job's friends come to visit him to offer their help. And all of them are like, Job, you must have done something horribly wrong to deserve this. After all, we know God is just, and we know the world is ordered by God's justice and fairness, so you must be getting what you deserve.
And for the next 34 chapters, the friends and Job go back and forth in very dense Hebrew poetry. His friends keep speculating about why God might have sent such suffering, and they even start making up lists of hypothetical sins that Job must have committed. But after each accusation, Job defends his innocence.
And Job is innocent.
He is. He's also on an emotional roller coaster. At some moments, he's very confident that God is still wise and just.
Yeah, in other moments, he's doubting God's goodness.
He even comes to accuse God of being reckless, unfair, and corrupt. So by the end of the dialogues, Job demands that God come and explain himself in person. And God does so. He comes in the form of a great storm cloud.
Now, God doesn't give Job a direct answer. He doesn't tell Job about the conversation with the Satan.
Yeah, he does something very different. He takes Job on a virtual tour of the universe. He He shows Job how grand the world is, and he asks him if he's even capable of running it or understanding it, just for a day. He shows Job how much detail there is in the world, things that we might see every day, but really don't understand at all. But God does. He knows it all intimately. He pays attention to the beauty and operations of the universe in ways that we haven't even imagined and in places that we will never see.
Then to conclude, God shows Job two wondrous beasts and brags about how great they are.
Yeah, they are dangerous. I mean, they would kill you without even thinking about it. And God says they're not evil. They're actually a part of his good world.
And then that's it. That's God's whole defense. It's kind of weird. I mean, what was this all about?
It seems to be this. From Job's point of view, it looks like God is not just. But God's perspective is infinitely bigger. He's dynamically interacting with a whole universe of complexity when he makes decisions. And this is what God calls his wisdom.
So Job asking God to defend himself is actually kind of absurd.
He couldn't comprehend this kind of complexity even if he wanted to.
So where does this leave us?
Well, it leaves Job in a place of humility. He never learned why he suffered, and yet he's able to live in peace and in the fear of the Lord.
But that's not where the book ends, because after this, God restores to Job double everything he had lost. And this, again, is surprising. I mean, is this a reward? Is God saying, congratulations, Job, you passed this elaborate test?
No, I mean, the whole book just made the point that Job losing everything was not a punishment, and so now getting it back isn't a reward.
So why does he get it back?
Well, apparently, God, in his wisdom, decided to give Job a gift. We don't know why. But what we do know is that Job is now the kind of person who, no matter what comes, good or bad, he can trust God's wisdom.
And that's the book of Job and the end of our wisdom series.
These biblical books of wisdom are amazing. Each one offers a unique perspective on the good life, and you need to hear all of them together as you learn to live with wisdom and in the fear of the Lord. Hey, you guys, thank you.
Okay. So I like those, because could everyone see that just fine and all that?
Yep.
All right, good. So yeah, I like those as it's kind of a Bible Project different take on the wisdom literature and all, but that's a good setup for kind of what we're going through. So that's good stuff. So all right, so we'll kind of dive into this. And let me get the Bible going here. And so we'll read the first chapter. We'll read the first chapter. So you guys on Zoom, I'm going to share my screen again, and you guys will be able to hear it being read. So here we go. Get it on the first verse. And this is the New King James Version for everyone not here. So if your Bible says something remarkably different than it, let us know when we come back. So here we go, the first chapter of Job.
There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job. And that man was blameless and upright, and one who feared God and shunned evil. And 7 sons and 3 daughters were born to him. Also, his possessions were 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 female donkeys, and a very large household, so that this man was the greatest of all the people of the East. And his sons would go and feast in their houses, each on his appointed day, and would send and invite their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them. So it was, when the days of feasting had run their course, that Job would send and sanctify them. And he would rise early in the morning and offer burnt offerings, according to the number of them all. For Job said,
"It may be that my sons have sinned and cursed God in their hearts."
Thus Job did regularly. Now, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord. and Satan also came among them. And the Lord said to Satan,
From where do you come?
From going to and fro on the earth, and from walking back and forth on it.
Have you considered my servant Job? That there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, one who fears God and shuns evil.
Does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not made a hedge around him, around his household, and around all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. But now, stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will surely curse you to your face.
Behold, all that he has is in your power. Only do not lay a hand on his person.
So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. Now there was a day when his sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house, and a messenger came to Job.
The oxen were plowing, and the donkeys feeding beside them, when the Sabaeans raided them and took them away. Indeed, they have killed the servants with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you.
While he was still speaking, another also came and said,
The fire of God fell from heaven and burned up the sheep and the servants and consumed them. And I alone have escaped to tell you.
While he was still speaking, another also came.
The Chaldeans formed 3 bands, raided the camels and took them away. Yes, and killed the servants with the edge of the sword. And I alone have escaped to tell you.
While he was still speaking, another also came.
Your sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house, and suddenly a great wind came from across the wilderness and struck the 4 corners of the house, and it fell on the young people, and they are dead. And I alone have escaped to tell you.
Then Job arose, tore his robe, and shaved his head, and he fell to the ground and worshipped.
Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return there. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord.
In all this, Job did not sin, nor charge God with wrong.
Okay.
Again.
Oh, so stop this. All right, I can see everyone now again. Okay, so that's the first chapter, and we'll get onto the second one here in just a little bit. But I want to kind of talk about some of the things going on in this chapter. And one of the things I think that's helpful for us to remember as we go through Job here is, what is Job about? It's about setting up these questions about, is God just? Like that's, and we also have to remember what questions it's not answering, that it's using different things to say other stuff. So before we get into this, we see that in the land of Uz lived a man named Job. Uz is not Hebrew. It's not a Hebrew area. It's kind of like the people that would have been reading this would have been, that would have thought it was like, it's like out Timbuktu type of thing. It's over there. So it's not, so the story is free from understanding God's justice through like strict adherence through the law. So like it's kind of somewhere, it's like it's kind of like the fairy tales, right? It's like in a land far, far away, type of like that's kind of what it's doing. In fact, all of Job's friends, except for the last one, all have Gentile names. They don't have Hebrew names. So that's an intentional thing. We're not supposed to be reading this through a lens of familiarity. Also, the book of Job is assumed. I kind of grew up with this notion that the book of Job is very old, that it's one of the oldest books that was written, type of thing. We now really don't think that. The way it's written isn't old. The reason why we thought that is because the situations that it's describing are old, and how they would have understood stuff. But what we kind of think now is that the author is writing this in such a way to kind of take you back to a previous time. Another thing that's interesting about Job is a lot of words in the book are the only times those words are used in the Bible. So they're using a vocabulary that is often bigger than what the rest of the Bible is using. So it's probably what's probably going on. You already used a Shakespeare metaphor. We could probably do that again. If there's still a lot of people that would write like contemporary Shakespeare things, it's probably something akin to that going on as they're writing about this story. And so it's, if someone asks you, did Job happen or not? I don't think that's really all that important of a question. Sure. Like that's whether it happened, whether it didn't. Like, I don't think that's what's important. I think what's important is why the story was told over and over again. And so, and I think that helps us in that next section too, when we're talking about the Hasatan, as we go through that section too. So, the first 5 verses talk about Job's life. Did anything in there stand out to anybody as interesting or odd, or?
It reminded me a little bit about Abraham.
A little bit about Abraham? In what way?
Abraham before he was Abraham. And,
okay.
Yeah,
just kind of how it's set up
like
that?
All of these things going on, and
okay.
like the patriarch of the whole area. It reminded me of that.
Okay. Yeah. That's good. So kind of reminds you of Abraham. So, anybody else have anything that kind of reminded you?
The burnt offerings and Isaac.
The burnt offerings and Isaac. So right before we get to that, so we'll come back to that because that's one of the things that stands out to me is the burnt offerings. It says that he feared God and shunned evil. Like it says that, and he says that to say he was blameless.
He's really worried about his children to be doing that sacrifice every day after they've been out partying.
So how does that read? I've been reading stuff around that, and there's not a collective understanding of why that's here in the story. It's obviously an important detail. Is this the last thing that's said right before we go to the heavenly courts? So how do you guys read that section about, it's verse 5. It's like, when a period of feasting had run its course, Job would make arrangements for them to be purified. Early in the morning, he would sacrifice burnt offerings for each of them, thinking, perhaps my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. This was Job's regular custom.
Somewhere in the Bible, I don't know exactly where, it talks about not you, but your children's children will be punished.
Yeah, that's Old Testament.
I think maybe if that all happened before this, he may be trying to make up for whatever the children or the children's children may do.
Yeah. So he's making up for it. Like that's true. Like, is there any other ways? Do you think this is positive or negative? What do you think? Negative? Like, why do you think it's negative?
Well, he's assuming his children have sinned.
Yeah.
And so he's got to make amends for that because he fears God, and maybe not quite.
So I tend to agree with you, Ed. It seems like he's hedging. constantly? You know, like he's like, oh man, like you don't want to upset the big guy. Yeah, you don't want to upset. Want to remain covered. You know, like that's like all that stuff. Now I read someone else that went, oh, like that this could have been a display of like just he's so righteous that he's just constantly being righteous, you know? And I was like, okay, like I could see that. I see that too. With the understanding of Ecclesiastes and Proverbs, I think this is being sarcastic a little bit. And I think that this is a chink in his armor, that he's scared of losing everything, you know? Like that's what I think. And I think that rectifies towards the end there, towards what and how the book ends. I think it makes sense because he's no longer worried about losing everything at the end. And like he's walked through the fire type of thing. So that's over there. But I thought it was interesting when I was reading about these people, these people that were saying like, oh no, this is just another example of his righteousness. I was like, oh, that's an interesting take. So
my note in here also says that Job's portrayal of Satan echoes the story from the 3rd chapter of Genesis.
So all right, so third chapter of Genesis. So
Satan has a supernatural power.
So yeah, let's talk about this scene. So because this scene is odd, and I think we do some things that maybe with it that are unhelpful, but we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that. And so verse 6 says, one day the angels came to present themselves to the Lord, and Satan also came with them. The Lord said to Satan, where have you come from? Okay. Satan there is capitalized in our Bibles, right? Mm-hmm. It's not capitalized in the Hebrew text. It's not capitalized. It's a title. So it would be.
That's what the study Bible says.
Yeah.
It's not believed to be the Satan. It's just a surname or something.
Yeah.
Of one of the angels, apparently.
So it's the same. It's the same idea as like a prosecutor or something like that. Like that like in a courtroom, you would have someone that would be like a prosecutor, and Satan, and you've heard me say it before, I do this intentionally. Satan, the Hasatan means the accuser, or the
the opposer.
The opposer. Like that.
I like that aspect. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was just saying something to my husband. I had it on mute and I just unmuted it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay. You can leave it on mute if you want to, and unmute whenever you want to talk too. That's fine.
Okay, that's a good idea.
Yeah. But so this Hasatan is kind of this accusing role. And so he's kind of accusing, and then now, so who do you think he's accusing? Who is he opposing? Like, what's kind of the sense here that you guys get?
Power play.
So power play, like it's it's kind of like, well, God, is he really following you the way that you think he is? Because God is almost like, well, look at Job. Look how great he is. You know, and all those things. And a very honest question is asked. And I think it's an honest question because it's one we ask. You know, it's one that gets asked a lot by us. And I think that's why it's good. I like kind of taking the name of Satan off of it and kind of putting it into that opposer or that accuser role. Because I think this question gets asked a lot. It's like, you know, what if everything went bad? Would I be able? I mean, that's like the classic youth group question, right? Like, especially like of kids my age, because I grew up in the age of Columbine, And so like every youth group thing after that grew up was like, if someone held a gun to you, would you confess Christ and stuff like that? It's that same question. You know, it's that same question. And I think it's one that we ask a lot here. And so I think this heavenly courts and the way it's presented is kind of like if you picture like a medieval king and how his courts would work, and you have all these people that kind of run the kingdom are in there, and they're like, and he's kind of, well, go over there and do this, go over there and do this. It's kind of presented as the heavenly courts are kind of operating like that. And so then this one opposer is coming up, well, would he really be doing this? You know, if he didn't have anything take him from him. So he says, stretch out your hand and strike everything that he has, and surely he will curse you to your face. And the Lord's like, okay, that's fine. So did anyone have any thoughts about this section before we have everything collapse around
I heard
you?
it a long time ago. An insurance person that I had insurance with referred to Job as the original insurance man.
The original insurance man? Well, why did he say that? Why did he say that?
Apparently he felt that as he was doing all the sacrificing for his children, that was insurance against future.
Yeah. Like that's
Wow.
like he's hedging. That's exactly what.
Stuck in my head for a long time.
That's really that's kind of how I look at it. Like that's and so I think we're supposed to see a chink in the armor there. I like the biblical authors being more clever than we originally let on them to be. And I think there's a chink in the armor, and then the accuser, the Satan, the Hasatan, the opposer, all that, he comes and he's like, is this really the way? You know, what would happen if everything did go south? And so everything does go south on him, right? And rapidly, and you have basically like all of his oxen, and then all of his like servants get killed, and then another one, and the Chaldeans are raiding, and they've taken everything, and then his whole family is killed too, right? Is this where his family's killed?
Yes.
Yeah, your sons and daughters were feasting and drinking wine at the oldest brother's house, and suddenly a mighty wind came up and hit the four corners of the house, which four corners is, that's something that we have still in our lexicon, but we don't use it as much. But four corners means like north, south, east, and west. Like it's like it came from everywhere. There was no escape type of
like a tornado.
Yeah, like a tornado, something like just there's no escape, right? There's just, you could not get away from it. And
it makes me wonder if I could ask.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if, as Satan was perhaps thinking, maybe he didn't have that foundation for that house with his faith like he was supposed to if that all fell in. Just
well,
like
I think
where you plant the seeds and all of that.
Yeah. Well, and you have all of this stuff where it all just collapses, and and it all collapses there, and everything goes around. So like it's almost like his hedging has now not worked, and
I think it was just an 84 tornado.
And he tore his robe like Hulk Hogan in the 80s, shaved his head, and fell on the ground. And he says, super famous verse of the Bible. And as naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised, or blessed be the name of the Lord. Like that's, and then it says this, and in this Job did not sin by charging God with any wrongdoing. That's an important verse, and we have to take it at its face value. That even in amidst this tragedy, Job didn't sin. So, but already in this first chapter, I think it's inviting us to feel very uncomfortable. And I've over the years of studying this, I think a lot of the study is meant to try to make us feel comfortable with this in the front. I don't think the book is meant, I don't think this is meant to make us feel comfortable. You know, this is like what we're watching a movie, and when the problem in the movie comes in, I don't think it's meant to, you know, it's like, oh man, this is tense and I don't know how this is going to work out. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
My personal take from this is that those of us who are approaching middle age have experienced loss of a loved one.
Yeah.
And I think I relate to it from that standpoint. Is, you know, how did I feel about that? Well, I was disappointed. I was unhappy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I cried a lot and I still do.
Yeah.
But this is life. We're all going to go up there someday or wherever that is.
Yeah.
We go.
Yeah. And so are you saying that you kind of relate with what Job says there? Yeah.
I mean, I didn't lose faith. I didn't say, well, I'm done. I'm not going to church anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know if Job ever understood that he was actually an example for everyone to follow.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing that I get, in addition to strength of faith, the fact that you are an example. Millions of people are going to, for each year, just.
Well, and even Chris with the stock market.
everything's crashing right now.
And you wonder, is he an example all the way through when you're at this point? You go, oh, does this continue?
Well, and so what I hear you guys saying, it seems like the way this is written is that it draws us all in and allows us to see our own stories of loss. In this story.
It's hard to take away that, why did it happen? Like when I lost my daughter.
Yeah.
You know, a very simple operation and all of a sudden it goes south.
Yeah.
Why? And I couldn't even get to see her.
Yeah.
I made a plane ticket.
That's the tough part.
She passed that same night before I could even get there. So you say, well, why do those things happen? You can't even get any comfort out of it.
Yeah.
It was a hard thing to go through.
Yeah.
We have to understand, I guess, that after getting through all this, and like both of you having lost someone very close to you, more than one someone, you go, maybe I'm not always supposed to know the why.
Yeah.
Daughter and a wife.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Or the when.
And that's, and I think this is like dragging us into the story. Mm-hmm. And I think that's good for us to be able to see our own heartache, you know, our own hurt in this. And I think that's what it's inviting us to do, inviting us into that question that the accuser, the opposer, the Satan, you know, is saying there. It's like, like, you know, was my foundation of faith sitting on something else? And so like so I think it's a good question to go through there. So let's read chapter 2 now. Chapter 2 is not that long. So let me share the screen again. And we'll do chapter 2. All right, here we go.
Again, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord. And Satan came also among them to present himself before the Lord. And the Lord said to Satan,
From where do you come?
From going to and fro on the earth, and from walking back and forth on it.
Have you considered my servant Job? That there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, one who fears God and shuns evil, and still he holds fast to his integrity. Although you incited me against him to destroy him without cause.
Skin for skin. Yes, all that a man has he will give for his life. But stretch out your hand now and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will surely curse you to your face.
Behold, he is in your hand, but spare his life.
So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and struck Job with painful boils from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head. And he took for himself a potsherd with which to scrape himself while he sat in the midst of the ashes. Then his wife said to him,
Do you still hold fast to your integrity? Curse God and die.
You speak as one of the foolish women speaks. Shall we indeed accept good from God? And shall we not accept adversity?
In all this, Job did not sin with his lips. Now, when Job's 3 friends heard of all this adversity that had come upon him, each one came from his own place. Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite, for they had made an appointment together to come and mourn with him and to comfort him. And when they raised their eyes from afar and did not recognize him, they lifted their voices and wept, and each one tore his robe and sprinkled dust on his head toward heaven. So they sat down with him on the ground 7 days and 7 nights, and no one spoke a word to him, for they saw that his grief was very great.
Okay, stop sharing here. Okay, so what kind of stood out to you in chapter 2 here? Anything kind of stand out to you? It's kind of more of the same. It's just more. Just kind of keeps going down the rabbit hole. So something that so the accuser, opposer, Satan there, he comes back and he's like, skin for skin, which we don't really know what that means, but we can guess what it means. Like that a man will give all he has for his own life, but stretch out and actually hit his flesh and bone, and he'll surely curse you. And so the Lord's like, all right, like you can do that now. And so Satan went out from the presence and afflicted Job now with all these sicknesses and hurts and boils and so that happened. So
how can God say to Satan, don't affect his person, and yet Satan gives him boils? I don't get that. So here's.
I said, don't take his life.
Don't take his life.
I don't think it's
the person meant life.
Yeah. So I think a common thing in Job, and is like, well, this is how God's heavenly court works. I don't think I think this is just this moving this story along. I don't think this is a person like. And I think us having that in our English Bibles, capital S Satan as like a name, it's not that in the Hebrew. It is lowercase. Could I even prove that? Let's see, what is it? So this is the Jewish study Bible. So these are the Hebrew people. And this is chapter 1, verse 6. One day divine beings presented themselves before the Lord, and the adversary came along with them. And the Lord said to the adversary, where have you been? The adversary said to the Lord, I've been roaming all over the earth. So like they don't even spend time, putting a personification on it. I think that's something that our English translations have kind of provided a disservice to us, because we look at this, that it's telling us there's this big cosmic battle between our suffering between God and Satan, and, like the arbiter of evil and the arbiter of good. And I don't think this story is wanting us to see that. And I think our English translations have brought us into that by just putting a personal name. So I think I think, and I could be wrong about this, I think the story is wanting us rather to have this question in our mind. It's like, wait a second. When bad things happen to me or my friends or people that I know, is God acting in justice in that sense? Like, it's like, is that good? And I think this story is hitting at that emotion in us that says that when we're having those bad days, when something bad happens, that we're going, oh man, I must have done something wrong to upset God.
Are we being punished?
Yeah, are we being punished?
A little of this reminds me of the Great Divorce.
Okay. In what way? What does it remind you of the Great Divorce?
What you were just saying about why is there, you came from there and why are we going here? And
okay. Yeah.
the why.
Yeah, all these whys. Yeah, Great Divorce does not have a lot of answers, but it sure provides you a lot of.
Makes you really think.
Makes you really think about yourself, and like, am I being like this?
Yeah.
And I kind of think this book is very similar to that, because we're going to start getting into the friends and what Job says, and the friends say some unfortunate things, and those are all things that I've thought. Those are things that I've heard other people say, and so that's definitely the case, so that's yeah. So his wife is incredibly unhelpful, but but I could see like me acting this way to Coley. I'm like, listen, you're doing too much, like all that stuff. Just get done with it, like all that stuff. You kind of hate to see people suffering that are close to you too.
Is she a super multitasker?
Oh yeah, who, Coley? Oh yeah.
I kind of get
You
that.
wouldn't tell her, just die.
It's like, how many arms do you have?
Yeah.
I could just see that.
And Job replies, in verse 10, you're talking like a foolish woman.
Yeah.
He says, shall we accept good from God and not trouble? In all of this, Job did not sin in what he said. So again, it says that he did not sin in what he said. It's wanting you to get this picture of Job, that he did not sin in what he said. So I want to talk about why I like reading this with a certain level of sarcasm, because I think that's true. But you also have Noah. And Noah, remember, he was chosen because he was righteous and devout. But we also got to remember how Noah's story ended.
Screwed up at the end.
Yeah. Like something happened after all of that he got drunk, and there was something that happened with nakedness and his son that caused a curse to fall on them all. It doesn't say what happened. I think it's inviting us to have a little bit of imagination, but it doesn't say what happened. And so, but that's what happened to Noah as righteous. The Bible is already used to being creative in this way of saying like this person's righteous and devout, and then kind of having this other thing going on, because like we can see that in ourselves.
Yeah. And all through the Bible, you take Solomon and David, and they always point out something.
Yeah.
Everybody's got their little sin.
Yeah.
David is
a big sin.
And I think all those stories can kind of be wrapped up into what ends up happening at the end of Job, and like how we can view those people as righteous and not all at the same time. So I take the story seriously, and it says in all this Job didn't sin. So, and then we have Job's three friends. Again, they're not Jewish. They don't have Hebrew names. That's important to the story, just getting us into the story. and they didn't even recognize him from a distance. And then they mourn for 7 days, with him.
That part I really like.
You like that?
That way of comforting by just being there. You don't have to talk or say anything other than maybe, I don't know if they held hands, but just give them that comfort that I'm here for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
That part I really like.
Someone.
Mm-hmm. But it only lasts for so long, right? I like that. It's funny in my mind. I'm going, okay, is the devil, is Satan going to come and say, shoo, shoo? Yeah.
This Bible likens it to sitting Shiva.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I didn't read the Hebrew stuff here, but I'm sure that's probably a likeness that they would probably have. Yeah. Okay. So let's do chapter 3 now. Job's first poetry, and does he start sinning now? Oh, I don't know. Perhaps not. Maybe it's not the best thing. So after 7 days, here we go.
After this, Job opened his mouth and cursed the day of his birth.
May the day perish on which I was born, and the night in which it was said, a male child is conceived. May that day be darkness. May God above not seek it, nor the light shine upon it. May darkness and the shadow of death claim it. May a cloud settle on it. May the blackness of the day terrify it. As for that night, may darkness seize it. May it not rejoice among the days of the year. May it not come into the number of the months. Oh, may that night be barren. May no joyful shout come into it. May those curse it who curse the day. Those who are ready to arouse Leviathan, may the stars of its morning be dark. May it look for light but have none, and not see the dawning of the day. Because it did not shut up the doors of my mother's womb, nor hide sorrow from my eyes. Why did I not die at birth? Why did I not perish when I came from the womb? Why did the knees receive me, or why the breasts that I should nurse? For now, I would have lain still and been quiet. I would have been asleep. Then I would have been at rest with kings and counselors of the earth who built ruins for themselves, or with princes who had gold, who filled their houses with silver. Or why was I not hidden like a stillborn child, like infants who never saw light? There the wicked cease from troubling, and there the weary are at rest. There the prisoners rest together. They do not hear the voice of the oppressor. The small and great are there, and the servant is free from his master. Why is light given to him who is in misery, and life to the bitter of soul who long for death, but it does not come, and search for it more than hidden treasures? Who rejoice exceedingly and are glad when they can find the grave? Why is light given to a man whose way is hidden, and whom God has hedged in? For my sighing comes before I eat, and my groanings pour out like water. For the thing I greatly feared has come upon me, and what I dreaded has happened to me. I am not at ease, nor am I quiet. I have no rest, for trouble comes.
Okay. So like joyful, right? Like that's like that's, yeah. So like that's a rough thing. And he basically like curses.
Why?
Curses like why in the world was I even born? To all of this, which is interesting. Like he's not cursing God directly, but man is sure as cursing what God has done. Yeah, like that's kind of interesting. And as I was reading it there, it's again, I think it's allowing us for when there's been bitter times in our own lives and we have uttered things like this. It's allowing our souls, our beings to almost grab a hold of these words with a certain level of understanding, and that's also, I think Jesus and the way the Gospels treat his crucifixion, they, many of them, they quote Jesus when he says, my God, why have you forsaken me? It's that almost sounds, that's Psalm 22. And it almost sounds the same as this, that it's just like, why is everything falling apart all around me?
Why me?
Yeah. Why me? Why is this happening, here and now and all of that. And I think it's dragging us into there. And I think it's helpful for us to see that Jesus even says similar things to that on the cross, and then we also think about his prayer in the garden, beforehand, and like all these things, and that's leading up to Jesus' death and resurrection. But I think all those things are allowing us to gravitate towards that emotion, but realize that as we continue to read Job, it doesn't stay there. And and Jesus rises again, but recognizing that that's a real emotion in us all, and that's a real thing going on inside of us. And so I think this book is just being honest with ourselves right here at the beginning. And it's and I think the author is allowing us a window into our own souls and the souls of our own friends. And as we continue through this, I think that window becomes more and more apparent as we go through the very unhelpful friends, right? and I think it's going to be a window into seeing how sometimes we may have been unhelpful to friends in grief, or we may have been unhelpful to ourselves in grief as well, as we're trying to cope, like with all of this. So it is 12:03 now. Did anyone have any?
What about verse 25?
Yeah, 25.
Where it says, "For I greatly feared to come upon me that which I was afraid of has come unto me." So he must have had it not always been easy in his being. Don't you think that's so? Like he had some uncertainty. So already before this happened.
You think that may be connected to that him hedging at the beginning?
I think
that's interesting. That's interesting. I kind of flew by that, but that's interesting that he's like, I was always scared this day would come. And that's and again, I think that's something we've all kind of
definitely. Yes.
It reminds me so much of my favorite quote.
It's so favorite.
Basically, there are two important days in your life: the day you were born and the day you find out why. And he doesn't know his purpose yet. That's what I get out of it.
Well, and I think
God has a purpose for him. What is it?
Well, and I think he ends up discovering the purpose, but that purpose exists in humbleness. Like that I think he's saying all the right things. Blessed, the Lord gives, the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. He's saying all the right things here. He's not sinning in anything he's saying, but his whole body moves into that position at the end of the book. And if we want to make a Jesus connection, Jesus does the same thing, where his whole body, it becomes the servant of the creation, as we connect it to the suffering servant idea in Isaiah. And so like that's, this whole thing for the salvation of mankind. So I don't know. It's cool. It's a cool story, and it doesn't have any good answers right away. And it doesn't even have the good answers at the end too. So we'll end with a prayer here. Thank you for coming, everybody. Jesus, we thank you for this day, and we thank you for your scriptures. Lord, as we read through Job, help us to see and ask the questions that we need to ask and see your wisdom in this world. Lord, continue to be with all those that are sick and hurting, with all those having surgeries upcoming. And Lord, as we go through Job and remember our own tough times, we thank you for those memories. But Lord, we ask you to lead us through as we relive them now. Thank you, Jesus. Amen.
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 Thanks, Pastor.
It's good seeing everybody.
Good seeing you guys.
Good seeing you all.
Thanks for coming. We'll be doing class again next Thursday. I won't cancel yet. Yeah.
Somebody won't cancel it for you.
Yeah, exactly. But thank you for coming, Evelyn.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, you have a good day. We'll see you soon.
Okay.
All right.